Previously on the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast.
Next month for August, we are going to go somewhere fun.
Okay.
Enough of plagues and such. So let's head over to one of the best amusement parks around.
Ooh.
Let's go to EarthWorld.
Ooh.
It's by Jacqueline Rayner and features the 8th Doctor, Fitz and Anji. And this title was also republished for the 50th anniversary collection.
Yes.
So it's available digitally as well.
Cool. Fantastic.
And now our story continues.
Welcome, everyone, to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. This is Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London. How's it going, Matt?
It's going pretty well. How are you doing today, Chris?
Okay. It is not as hot as it has been.
You had quite the heat wave. I'm glad that seemed to have passed, at least temporarily.
Yes, yeah. It's still relatively warm. However, it went over 40 degrees Celsius, which I know in some parts people go, 40 degrees, which is about over 100 Fahrenheit. But most homes don't have aircon in the UK. Most homes, like ours, are built to keep the heat in. Fun!
Well, I tend to run my aircon quite a bit in the summer because it gets similar to what you've been experiencing. But
yeah, at least you have it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if more air conditioning units will be installed in the UK as a result.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems to be the trend, at least in terms of the way the temperatures are going.
Yeah.
We have some sad news to talk about. We've learned recently that Bernard Cribbins has passed away.
Yes. Bernard Cribbins is very much a kind of, certainly in the UK, he was a cultural icon even before his contacts with Doctor Who were renewed in the early part of this century. He was... amongst various other things, the voice of the Wombles, which is or the narrator of the Wombles, which is a very iconic children's show from the 70s and 80s, which was about environmental activism as practiced by kind of rodent creatures living on Wimbledon Common.
And he was also the voice of Paddington, wasn't he? In some...
Possibly, yeah. I know he was also the narrator several times on Jack and Nori, which is a wonderful British storytelling thing for children TV show. Yeah, and he was in Fawlty Towers, and he's just everywhere. And he sang a song called Right Said Fred, which was a staple of our car journeys as kids, and inspired a band of the same name. Yeah, it's just so sad.
He was also in the second Doctor Who and the Daleks film.
He was.
With Peter Cushing. And
yeah.
And then we also lost David Warner like a week or so prior.
Yeah, it's been a sad week, but yeah, we just to remember the great joy that both of those very fine performers have given us. But going back to the second Doctor Who movie, Lauren said to me, "Did you know that he was in a Dalek movie in the 60s?" So yes, I have been informed of that, yes.
And those have recently been getting some replay in theaters as well, with their 4K restorations.
Yeah.
So you can see them on the big screen again.
Yeah. That's it's just sad, but it's just it's such a standing achievement from both of them. I never met Bernard Cribbins. I met David Warner once at a Big Finish thing, and he was lovely. Oh well.
And I lost my beloved orange and white cat, Sunny.
Yes.
She had made it past 18 years old, and she sat in on a number of recordings over the years. So.
Oh yeah.
But on to happier times.
Yes, onto happier things.
We have some Doctor Who book news to talk about. It looks like the publication date for Rebellion on Treasure Island has slipped from the fall of 2022 to late April 2023 now. So this is the fourth in the series of, I guess for the lack of a better term, we could call them Penguin crossover classics, of which we had Return of Robin Hood by Paul Mars, which recently was published. And then on the audiobook side, we have the Target novelization of The Android Invasion by Terrance Dicks, which got an audio release on August 4th, and it's read by Jeffrey Beavers. And then The Keys of Marinus, which was novelized by Philip Hinchcliffe back in the day, will be released in a few weeks on September 1st. And that's read by Jamie Glover, who played Ian in An Adventure in Space and Time, and then also for Big Finish. We have the 2023 Doctor Who Annual coming out on September 1st, and that features 15 different doctors on the cover. So at least Jodie's back on the cover in some form, while it's still her tenure as the Doctor. Yeah. And then
possibly 16, depending upon what's happening with Tennant.
I was going to say, if you want to count David Tennant 2 or 3 times, the number of his incarnations. And then December 1st, we're going to get a trio of short stories written by Paul Mars called Dead on Arrival and Other Stories. And these are original audio tales inspired by the Doctor Who comic strips first published in the annuals back in the 70s.
Ooh.
So I'm not sure if they're going to be like sequels to or expansions of or just kind of inspired in tone by, but a trio of those coming out. Cool. And then in January 2023, there'll be a new Doctor Who audio featuring the 12th Doctor called The Ice Kings, which is written by Neil Bushnell. And then finally, we have another listener publishing something Doctor Who related. Beth Axford will be publishing a Doctor Who trivia book called, appropriately enough, the Doctor Who quiz book, Travel the Whoniverse and Test Your Knowledge in the Ultimate Unofficial Quiz, which is due out September 29th from Bonnier Books, UK. And Beth has written for the official Doctor Who website, the Radio Times, and was featured as a member of Doctor Who Magazine's Time Team.
Cool.
So congratulations, Beth, on getting that work published.
Congratulations.
So I think this brings us to Show and Tell.
Yeah, this brings us to Show and Tell, yeah. So I was having a conversation sort of a couple of months back with a friend of mine, James, who I knew that he had some sci-fi interests and everything, but we started just talking about the podcast, and he said, I've got something that you might be interested in. Oh, really? And it turned out that James, in the 90s, won a competition to get the original manuscript of The Eight Doctors by Terrance Dicks.
Oh, wow.
And it is, as Terrance Dicks wrote it, complete with editor's notes. It was sent back. So it is kept kind of like in a secure location. So I have only seen photographs of it, which is fair enough because I imagine, it's a very precious thing. So all that I have seen, I say photographs, all I have seen is the first page of the prologue, which is set not long after the events of the TV movie.
Which I'm looking at right now, and it's fascinating.
Yes.
Send me a shot of this. And is this something that we can put like on Twitter so folks can look at this?
I think so, yes. I think we shall when this episode drops. One thing that's particularly amusing is that he describes the post-TV movie TARDIS as having white rounded walls and the many-sided control console with central columns, because apparently the Doctor has decided to revert back to kind of like the classic setting to erase the traces of the Master. Or maybe Terrance Dicks hated the TV movie console room.
And I see the note in red there. Have it changed back to the...
Yes, have to change back, I'm afraid. It's like, yeah. It's almost like, no, we talked about this, Terrance. So, yeah.
Wow, this is fascinating.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? There's a few little kind of like grammatical points or stylistic points, I think probably more than grammar. There is apparently, because I've never read The Eight Doctors, as I've said before, but there is a whole chapter about the Veil Yard that didn't make the final cut. So, there, apparently a lot of it is as was printed, but just with, but that is so remarkable. the console.
And I like the note here, proofreader, please check to make sure that time bubble and time stream remain 2 words throughout the entire... So there's consistency there.
Yeah, so I don't know who would have written these notes, whether it would have been Stephen Cole.
Yeah, I would think so.
Well, or because he was not the commissioning editor, but he might have been doing the... But yeah, I think he was drafted in because he knew what he was talking about when it came to Doctor Who. A little bit of Doctor Who history there for you.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes. Right. So, Matt, what have you got?
Well, nothing quite so mind-blowing, but I am the proud owner of a new 4th Doctor Build-A-Bear.
Oh, wow.
Which is sitting next to my 13th Doctor one. And that makes 5 Doctors now that have had the Build-A-Bear treatment. So we have the 4th, the 10th, the 11th, 12th, and 13th now. I only have the 4th and the 13th, and 2 of them are currently now sold out. I think the 11th Doctor and the 13th Doctor. And it's very cute. He's got his tweed vest and coat and slacks, and then 3 or 4 foot long scarf in the proper colors. And he has a working Sonic, which you can hear. And he's got his season 12 hat that Tom Baker wore throughout much of that season. Yeah, it's just really cute, and I would definitely consider getting a 6th Doctor or a 7th Doctor version if either of those ever get released, especially if like the 7th Doctor comes with a little question mark umbrella. But yeah, the Build-A-Bear series appears to be still going strong, and fans, if you're into cute depictions of doctors, you may want to check that out.
Cool.
Right, well, I think that brings us to our book for this month.
It does.
EarthWorld,
yes.
Which was first published in March of 2001. And we've read Jacqueline Rayner before. Mm-hmm. By some measures, she may be the most successful Doctor Who author ever, because The Stone Rose, which we reviewed back in episode 27, is, I think, the most successful Doctor Who novel ever published in terms of popularity and sale numbers. And of course, she's written extensively for Big Finish, including adapting their very first season of Bernie's Summerfield Adventures way back before Big Finish even secured the Doctor Who license. And then most recently, she wrote the first 2 books for that Penguin Classics crossover range, which debuted last summer. And that was The Legends of Camelot, which may get a mention in this book, featuring the 10th Doctor and Donna, as well as The Wonderful Doctor of Oz, featuring the 13th Doctor and Missy. And this was release number 43 of 73 in the 8th Doctor Adventures, and is actually followed chronologically by the past Doctor novel Fear Itself, which picks up where EarthWorld leaves off. Incidentally, there's a great interview with the author of Fear Itself, Nick Wallace, which I listened to on a recent episode of Pieces of Eighth. And there are 11 titled chapters here, and the chapters are titled like Elvis Lives and The Fluffy Frog in the Sky, which is not a chapter about Ryan's grandmother Grace. And this is set on EarthWorld, which, spoilers, as it's revealed on the back cover, that this is kind of a theme park planet.
Yeah.
And which the characters figure out pretty quickly in the first chapter. In orbit around a planet called New Jupiter in the far future. Lance Parkin and Lars Pearson's book, A History, places this in around the year 2800. Just given the technology and the kind of the reliance on Earth still, but that's just speculation. And this features the TARDIS team of Fitz and Anji, who we previously met in Trading Futures. Anji Kapoor was born in 1973 and is a third-generation British Asian, and she's also a non-practicing Hindu and would be around 28 years old here.
Yep.
And this is Anji's first ever story traveling in the TARDIS, having been introduced in the previous story, Escape Velocity, which also wrapped up the Doctor Trapped on Earth arc.
Yeah, and also as well, the Doctor at this point has kind of lost his memories, or lost a large part of his memories. And so he's getting to know Fitz again, as well as kind of Anji getting to know both. So, when we're saying about publishing, it's also just worth pointing out that this was republished as part of the 50th anniversary, and so therefore this book should be relatively easy to find on Kindle and the like.
And that edition features a new introduction by Jacqueline Rayner for the 50th, like you said, which she wrote back in August of 2012, where she talks about revisiting a work she wrote more than a decade ago, with EarthWorld being her first ever novel. And this is dedicated and rededicated to her parents, sister, Justin Richards, Gary Russell, Simon Axon, and Mark Wright. And I think we can probably
begin.
Yeah.
So instead of returning Anji to Soho in 2001, which is where she's from.
Oh, yeah, we should mention that Angie's from contemporary at the time.
Yes.
Kind of a young adult professional. And then Fitz was from 1960s, right?
Yes.
Kind of swinging London.
Yes.
Or London with swings. As EarthWorld interprets that.
Well, I think he's from the early part of the 60s. I think it's just before it starts to swing. And also as well, Fitz is an interesting character. He's, well, not saying Angie isn't, but like, because Fitz, he's of German heritage, which is something that the novels would occasionally kind of just pick up on. Yeah, because obviously he had a rough time.
Yeah, there's a few references to that in the narrative where, like, growing up, he would get picked on and stuff because of being originally from Germany and World War II and such.
Right, okay. So instead of returning Angie to Soho in 2001, the TARDIS has materialised on a rocky, barren plain, and Fitz seems sure that the Doctor's going to be able to work out where they are. But Angie, she's less confident. And also, alarmingly, so is the Doctor. And as they explore this plain, they are attacked by a caveman and, somewhat less explicably, a pterodactyl. And while fleeing, they run into an invisible barrier.
And the opening here was kind of set up, I think, to echo the end of An Unearthly Child.
Yes.
Where you have the TARDIS appearing on this desolate landscape with like a caveman shadow. But then it quickly diverts and goes down a different path.
Yes, it does somewhat. And the Doctor tries to open the barrier with his sonic screwdriver, but he can't consciously remember how it works. And he has to be distracted first, and then all the various movements and mechanisms just come to him instinctively. And the barrier opens, and Fitz leaps through. But before the Doctor or Angie can go after him, the barrier closes up again, and a security robot arrives to arrest them both. And this robot marches them across the plain to another barrier.
And I think this is where our dramatic reading comes in.
Oh, yes, yeah.
As they're kind of being marched across the desert.
Yes, it is.
This is read for us by author Sarah Kumari. And you can hear some of her work on episode 787 of the Hugo-nominated science fiction podcast called Escape Pod, which includes a reading of her work Ascend, Exalt, Love, Propagate, Rise. And you can also follow Sarah on Twitter at Sarah_K_J.
Yeah, let's have a listen.
The TARDIS could travel anywhere in space and time. They could therefore be anywhere at all, at any time. She hadn't really had a chance to think about that up until now. It had all seemed so unreal. Still, while they were actually in the TARDIS, she'd still been shell-shocked over her boyfriend's death. A bit inside her gave an ironic laugh. How was this for distraction from the grieving process? And the bits of her mind that were available for getting a grip on her new situation were taking up with trying to ignore the increasingly irritating Fitz, who was not someone she'd have chosen to travel around the universe with. Then she felt guilty about having felt that, because Fitz, for all she knew, could be dead now. For a few moments, in the far distant past that was her time in the TARDIS, she'd wondered how they'd cope, living together, just the three of them. She'd been in shared student houses with people she'd not got on with, but there'd always been the option of escape, to college, bars, other friends' houses. Now she couldn't very well stay in her room with a good book while the others went out exploring the universe, could she? Could she? Perhaps she'd suggest that next time. If there was a next time. You go and face the scary robots and dinosaurs, Fitz. I just want to finish Sense and Sensibility. Better to be boring than die. She didn't want to die. She was travelling with the guy with the time machine, and she knew, because Dave had been into that sort of stuff, that made her one of the main characters. Fitz too, so no more worrying about him either. Name near the top of the credits, tied up and gloated at by villains, but never killed by them. You knew you were always going to make it to the end of the story, except that one time in 100,000, where even so, you only ever died in a grand, heroic, tragic blaze of final episode glory, and this wasn't one, so she shouldn't be this scared. But would anyone else realise this? Would the real universe play by those fictional rules? Should she get a t-shirt printed with, "I'm a main character, don't kill me"? Would that help? And then she'd thought, as she'd kept doing, however much she tried to stop it, of Dave. Dave, whose life's ambition had been to be a main character, and yet who, even at the end, hadn't managed to progress beyond incidental. He hadn't even made it to guest star, one story only. Let's face it, he hadn't stood a chance. Anji had shot a discreet sideways glance at the Doctor at that point. He must have seen a lot of deaths. After a while it must really do your head in. Perhaps that was why he'd lost his memory, couldn't cope with it anymore. She shivered. Distraction. Her feet. No time for grief. Concentrate on the pain of each step. Try to count the blisters you know you have developed already. Just think about one step after another, after another. And then she decided that right here and now she'd almost prefer to use the grief to distract her from the pain of her feet. Need a different distraction, anywhere in time and space. Was that likely to be true? She'd travelled in space with the Doctor, excluding the possibility that the whole thing was just a drug-induced fantasy. The space travel bit, at least, had definitely happened. But, well, they'd just gone to your bog-standard bit of space near Earth. Perhaps the TARDIS could just shoot off into orbit really, really quickly, or she'd suffered some sort of strange time dilation effect from the speed. Ha! Velocity, not drugs. Again, discounting phantasms or figments of the imagination, however they were formed, she knew that aliens existed. After all, she'd not only met some, she'd pretty much killed a whole race of them. Slight exaggeration for dramatic effect. Aliens existed, and they had wanted to invade Earth. Therefore, they didn't come from Earth. Therefore, there were inhabited planets other than Earth. So far making sense. Well, logic, possibly not sense. Technology therefore existed that was capable of transporting people from one inhabited world to another. So, it was possible that she was on another planet. However, just how far was parallel evolution likely? Would there be dinosaurs on another planet that looked just like those out of picture books? Would there be such stereotypical cavemen? And, if dinosaurs and cavemen had survived, how had the civilization reached the point that enabled it to build energy guns, holographic skies, that was what the Doctor had guessed when she pointed out her frog, and robots with guns? Probable conclusion? They hadn't. Somehow this was a fake. If the technology existed to build spaceships like the ones she'd seen, then it existed to build robots and guns and, to clone Neanderthals, that sort of thing. After all, they were talking about cloning dodos back home, and they'd already done some extinct cow or something, and that was just what the public were told about. So there was no reason at all to suppose that she was on an alien planet in the far future or distant past. The Doctor's ship may just have zapped back to another bit of Earth, say a developmental complex in America. Maybe she was in Area 51. And then she thought of how Dave would react if he found out that Area 51 was actually a prehistoric theme park, which took her mind into those places she didn't want to go again, and she forgot about trying to rationalise things away.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for reading that.
Yep, thank you so much. Yeah.
We'll be sure to link to your episode of Escape Pod in the show notes so listeners can check out some of your other work as well.
Okay. So the robot has been kind of like taking them through, and they find themselves on the outskirts of this futuristic city and surrounded by angry guards who accuse them of sabotage and terrorism. And they confiscate Anji's name badge, which is one of the last gifts that her boyfriend Dave gave her before his death, which happened in the previous book. And the guards throw the Doctor and Anji into a cell without giving them a chance to explain themselves. And they find themselves locked up with 3 teenagers, would-be terrorists, who've taken the alien names of Beezy, Zequephon, and Zernik to disassociate themselves from the distant and hated Earth. Unfortunately for Anji, their organisation is called the Association for New Jupitan Independence, or ANGI for short. And so this is a condemned cell for those who face execution. So I have to say, I just found that a bit of a weird coincidence.
Yeah, that was a. Well, it reminded me a little bit of how like ISIS became, a big terrorist group.
Yeah.
Then I always had to qualify, like if I was ever talking about the old 1970s TV show, The Secrets of ISIS.
Yes.
To differentiate it from that group. But same sort of deal here, where the necklace Angie's wearing is like proudly proclaiming her membership to this organization.
Yeah, but also, as well, I don't know that many people that wear necklaces or stuff containing their own name.
Yeah, you'd think it might have been like maybe Dave or something on her necklace.
Well, yeah, or just I don't know. It has like Adric vibes.
Well, and we should say too, like the tone of this story, I think, is kind of more so in. I almost want to say like the panto sort of vibe. At least that's kind of how I took aspects of this.
It is and it isn't, but yeah, that's it. I think we'll dig into that as we go on.
So, apart from the Doctor and Angie, so Fitz, when he crossed the barrier earlier, he finds himself in kind of a bizarre theme park version of ancient Egypt, complete with walking mummies and a man walking around with a jackal's head. And then there's a young blonde girl, probably around 13 years old or so, who finds him wandering about and helps him return to his proper area, which she determines to be the 20th century London zone. And he tells her that he's a famous pop star named Fitz Fortune, which he has delusions of grandeur, I think, in that aspect. But although she seems impressed, she has to flee back to Egypt when she spots one of the curators approaching. And this curator, Venna Durwell, believes at first that Fitz is a malfunctioning android, and to save him from disassembly, Fitz starts to point out all the errors in the zone around him. Things like flappers, rocket ships, and gas lamps didn't coexist in the same era. And bizarrely, there are war machines, which the curator says they must have been London's mail delivery service, because they were, of course, headquartered in the post office tower. Is that now called the BT Tower?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
When I visited London years back and saw that in the distance, I did get a chill down my spine looking at it. So this curator realizes that Fitz is for real, and she takes him to her office, intending to learn everything he knows about the real 20th century, and then she wants to kill him and use his knowledge to make a real name for herself, so she won't have to rely on Earth's heritage research grants to make her living. And she gets called off to an emergency in one of the parks, and then Fitz is then kidnapped by a security robot and brought before the 3 daughters of New Jupiter's president, whose name is John F. Hoover. And his 3 daughters are named Asia, Africa, and Antarctica. And they've taken a shine to him because Antarctica rescued him from Egypt, and they demand that he give a concert for them. And if he refuses, Africa's going to have him killed. And Fitz realizes that they're not joking when they take him to the Roman zone, where they watch a visitor that was kidnapped from EarthWorld. So the theme park isn't open fully to all tourists yet, but there's like a handful of like advanced tourists who are testing out the park or, kind of doing a run through. And that tourist is torn apart in the arena by an android lion. So yeah, there's a couple of different places where some of Jacqueline Rayner's, I don't know if you call it like areas of interest or academic specialties, but she has a background in both Arthurian legend and Roman times, which she explores in other books. But both of these kind of get covered in this, her debut novel as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess sometimes with debut novels, you're kind of thinking, well, I may only ever get published once, so let's just put this in here, let's put that there. But, which I don't think... which can be like a flaw, but I think here it's just a nice sprinkling.
A couple of other quick thoughts on kind of the opening here. I really feel like Angie shows strong companion potential right from the outset because she cottons on to the fact that they're in a simulation far earlier than Fitz or the Doctor.
Yeah.
The reasoning process that we heard in the dramatic reading. There's also a lot of explanations happening at the beginning of the novel, which I think made this a good candidate for the 50th anniversary selection because there's a lot of narrative explanations for the benefit of Angie, like how the chameleon circuit got stuck in the shape of a TARDIS and stuff. So it kind of makes it an entry point for newer readers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although we also get like references to like compassion, where Fitz says that they used to fly around the universe inside a stroppy redhead.
Yeah. we do touch on a bit of long-running story arcs and Eighth Doctor continuity. We'll have a chat later about how easy this is for new readers.
In the London zone, Fitz also notices a Yeti kind of wandering about, but he's not sure why, because, of course, his time, like you'd mentioned, predates the Web of Fear.
Yeah. So the Doctor and Anji, they're in the cell with those three kind of like would-be terrorists, Beezy, Zekofel and Zernik, and they eventually realise that Doctor and Anji are not government spies, and so they start explaining more about their organisation. And they say that President Hoover believes that all good things come from the birthplace of the human race, but the Anji movement wants a planetary identity of their own, and don't see why they should have to pay taxes to a distant, otherwise insignificant world. So, taxation without representation.
Lock up your tea.
Yes. And New Jupiter is suffering from a recession. Much of President Hoover's popularity depends upon the founding of EarthWorld, an Earth Heritage theme park, which it's hoped will boost tourism. And so the Anji boys want to sabotage EarthWorld. They've been helped by an anonymous supporter in the government who supply them with the devices they need to penetrate the force barriers and deactivate the androids. However, people have been dying mysteriously in EarthWorld, and when the boys were caught on the ground, they were thrown in here without a chance to explain themselves. And the Doctor, remembering the attack when they first arrived, reckons that the androids in the park might be malfunctioning, because many of the androids were designed by the three princesses. The Doctor decides to speak with them, whilst Anji and the boys return to the park to try to rescue Fitz.
Yeah, it's a kind of a very weird government where you have President Hoover, but he's very much like in a king-type role, so his three daughters are referred to as princesses throughout, even though technically I don't think they necessarily are.
One thing I quite liked was that President, to give him his full name, John F. Hoover, and because he has the presidential F.
As part of his name, yeah.
Yes.
So it's really interesting to see how like history gets distorted over time. And Jacqueline Rayner points out at one point that like, similar things happened with Arthurian legends and other type, Greek legends and such, and Roman legends. So they're trying to break out of this cell, and fortunately the guards didn't bother to search them. So Anji is able to distract them while the Doctor uses the sonic to open the cell door.
Well, she's distracting him, isn't she? I think so that he's remembering how to use it.
That's right. She's distracting him, so he's able to use the sonic without thinking about it, just kind of intuitively.
Yeah. Poor Anji. I mean, she must be wondering, what on earth have I wanted to
as a first adventure, this would give me
Well, it's the second adventure, her first adventure, which I've not read, pretty traumatic. And then this.
So when they decide to split up, and so Angie's with the three boys, and they go back to the park, and then the Doctor finds his way to the President's palace, specifically the wing where the three princesses are kept isolated from the general public. And he soon finds out why, because despite their genius-level intellects, they're also homicidally antisocial, and the deaths in the park were no accidents. And the princesses were locked away for the murder of their own mother, but they've inherited her talent for genetic manipulation and have learned much about the androids from the President's chief technician, known as Handstrom, who's been their only other contact in isolation. So when EarthWorld was first proposed as a concept, the princesses were allowed to design the park's androids, and they took advantage of that opportunity to build copies of themselves, switch places with them, and then sneak into the park unnoticed. And ever since then, the real princesses have been having murderous fun with the early visitors and competition winners who have been allowed into EarthWorld before its grand opening. And the Doctor, very disturbed by all of this, of course, questions the androids further and learns that, although they possess the real princess's memories, they don't recall killing their own mother. However, they assume they did so because she was going to tell their father that they were unfit to rule. So a little bit of backstory there.
Yes, yeah, indeed. So Anji and the Anji boys return to the prehistoric zone, where one of the princesses finds them and sets the android dinosaurs on them. And the Doctor sees all of this on the monitors in the princess's control room. And before they can stop him, he sabotages a control unit, shutting down all of the barriers between the different EarthWorld zones. And the android princesses try to kill him, but he flees, only to be recaptured by the guards. And this time he's brought before the president and Handstrom, the president's chief technician, to explain himself before they get round to killing him. And Handstrom seems even more shocked than President Hoover when the Doctor says that the girls in the palace are not the president's real daughters. When the Doctor reveals that they are androids, Handstrom examines them and realises that the Doctor is telling the truth. And now that the barriers are down in EarthWorld, the killer androids can cross freely between zones, and so all of the visitors to EarthWorld and the real princesses are in danger. And President Hoover reluctantly allows the Doctor to accompany Handstrom back to EarthWorld, where Durwell is trying and failing to control the situation.
And she's the curator that we met earlier.
Yes, that we met earlier. So the Doctor leaves Durwell, the curator, and Handstrom to evacuate the park and find the homicidal triplets, whilst he tries to find and rescue his friends. So it's somewhat Jurassic Parky, isn't it?
Yeah, and
Westworld.
yeah, and the War Games.
Yes, yeah.
And the androids of Tara.
Yes.
Some of the other zones of EarthWorld that are mentioned. So there's the Ancient World Zone, the Medieval Zone, the Prehistoric Zone, and then there's just a Japanese zone, which is just like anime culture.
Well, I've never been to Epcot, but I'm kind of like, I figure Epcot's a bit like this, isn't it?
Oh yeah, with the all the different world pavilions.
Yes.
Kind of simulating like a World's Fair.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. At one point, I meant to ask about this because Fitz is very hungry. He's imagining a packet of crisps.
Yeah.
But then he says, the proper kind with a little blue bag of salt inside.
Oh, yes.
Is that a real thing?
That's a real thing, yes. Yeah. So I think they're called Smiths. Yeah, so you would have like plain crisps, but there would be a little blue bag with salt that you could then sprinkle on it as much salt as you wanted.
Huh. I've never heard of that.
Yes, it was something that was very popular, I think, in the 60s, and then I think it kind of went off the market, and then it came back round about the time this book was published. Because I remember my dad being quite excited, like, oh, proper crisps. I was like, okay, this is a crisp where you have to do more of the work yourself. I don't quite understand the appeal. I don't tend to eat crisps, so I don't really know what the latest is and whether Smith's is still a thing.
The other thing I would point out, too, is that there are several emails throughout the narrative that are kind of sprinkled in. That Anji is, I can't tell if she's actually writing them to Dave, like on her she has like almost like a Palm Pilot, or if they're just kind of in her head.
I think she has written them. That's my feeling, that she's just written them, but they're in her draft, I think.
So that's kind of interesting that we get those little references. And then Fitz also mentions at one point that they used to know a bus driver, and I think that was kind of a reference to Iris Wildtime. That's who they met in the Blue Angel.
Yes, yeah.
So following the slaughter in the Roman arena, Antarctica decides that she wants Fitzfortune to give her a concert, and he's very reluctant to do so, knowing that he's kind of puffed up the description of his talents to them, but he knows he has no choice. And much to his own surprise, he knocks it out of the park with a stunning stage show. And the triplets show him to a dressing room and leave him with a Walkman-style device so he can listen to his own performance. But as he does so, the truth sinks in. He's a virtuoso guitar player because that's how the TARDIS remembered him. And he seems better than he's ever been because the real Fitz was never this good. And this was a little confusing to me at first because this is referencing
interference, amongst other things. Yeah.
That, but also there's a point in the narrative where Fitz also gets replaced with an android.
Yes.
And so, like, near the end of the book, he's talking about being the real Fitz or not. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this part of this story or is it part of a... So apparently there's like a version of Fitz that spent 2,000 years with Faction Paradox.
Yeah.
And such, but...
all of that happened in interference. Or most of it. And then he rocks up again in another book. But also, it's quite a curveball to chuck at the audience. If this is a bit of a kind of like almost like a pilot book or a reset book. as like an entry point for new readers. Like suddenly just chucking all this backstory at people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think the main thing is Fitz now knows that he's a copy, and he isn't too sure about what he thinks about that.
Yeah.
So when the barriers are kind of going down across EarthWorld, Anji and the Anji boys, I'm going to keep on using that.
It's better. Yeah, their names are quite unwieldy otherwise.
Yes, they are. Flee into the Egyptian zone, where Anji gets them past a guardian sphinx.
Answering a riddle.
Yes, yeah, because it's a very obvious riddle that she just knows.
They're in a hurry, and the Sphinx starts out by takes him like 5 seconds just to say the word "what," and then Angie like screams out, "The answer's a man. It's a man. Open the door." So I think the riddle is what starts on 4 legs, moves to 2 legs, and ends with 3 legs. Yes.
So they hide in a pyramid away from the kind of pursuing dinosaurs, and they need to solve another logical puzzle to proceed further. And then they kind of go through a maze where they find a sarcophagus, which opens up to reveal the Doctor.
And that other logic puzzle was kind of funny because it was literally how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? And they had to turn a light bulb a number of twists by solving some hieroglyphics to get the floor to open up.
Yeah, well, I was wondering if the Greek letter pi was going to make an appearance. 5 Doctors kind of reference to that. Anyway, so the sarcophagus is a lift that takes them back out of the pyramid. And the Doctor takes them to the 20th century zone, where they find Fitz huddled in a dressing room, repeating over and over that he's not the real Fitz. But the Doctor's got some more immediate concerns, because although the complex has now been evacuated, failure of the internal barriers is putting a strain on the external barrier. So even if the barriers don't explode and destroy the city, they'll release killer androids into the streets, where actual people live. And the Doctor wires Zernik, one of the Anji boys, his anti-android device into the barrier system, hoping to channel the power surge through it when the barrier collapses, and then send out a pulse that's going to deactivate all of the androids that's within range. But whilst the Doctor's doing all of this, Durwell gets Fitz back to her office and pulls a gun on him. And Durwell's the curator, woman from earlier, and she demands the knowledge that she needs so that she can kind of like break Earth Heritage's hold over her. The Doctor realises what's going on a little bit too late and breaks into her office just as she shoots Fitz, and just as the anti-android energy wave passes through the park. This Fitz is an android who explodes, killing Durwell. And the android had been planted by the triplets to throw Fitz's friends off the scent. And the real Fitz, or the one that's been travelling with the Doctor, is still the prisoner of the princesses. And their own security robots are shielded from the energy wave, so he is still trapped.
And Fitz is being held in a cell with an elderly Elvis impersonator who was invited to EarthWorld to sing his repertoire into an android copy. And the people of this era seem to be under the impression that Elvis was once king of the earth. The king. And unfortunately, Antarctica took a shine to the impersonator, kidnapped him so he could give her private concerts whenever she wanted. And since all of the androids in EarthWorld have now been deactivated, the triplets decide to pit Fitz and Elvis against each other in a fight to the death to see who would survive to give them a concert. I don't know why they didn't just do a battle of the bands here. But... So Fitz doesn't want to kill Elvis, but Elvis will do anything it takes to survive. And just as it seems he's about to get the upper hand and kill Fitz, kind of in the Roman gladiator arena, Africa shoots him dead, saving Fitz's life, because she was bored with Elvis anyway, and Fitz has something else she wants. The Walkman-like device which Fitz had used earlier also happened to scan his brain to copy his memories, which enabled the triplets to build their android copy. And because Fitz was having an identity crisis at the time, the android became obsessed with the fact that he wasn't the real Fitz. But the triplets had found something even more interesting in Fitz's memories, the fact that he has access to a time machine and could take them away from New Jupiter and off, to the real exciting, real-life Earth.
The gladiatorial singing thing makes me try to remember when pop idols started.
I think it was 2000, so it would have been...
Yeah, so it's around about this kind of time, or pop stars, or various... Yeah, so I think Jacqueline Rayner was tapping into stuff there that was very much bubbling in the zeitgeist, and would then give us the horrors of the X Factor for for a couple of decades. While Handstrom searches for the princesses in EarthWorld, the Doctor intercepts an emergency call from the palace. The President's wife, who has been in a coma ever since the attack by her daughters, has flatlined. And the Doctor attends the wife, Elizabethan, himself, and discovers that she's partly cybernetic. And that's why she appeared to die when the anti-android pulse was sent out from EarthWorld. And Hoover breaks down, blaming himself for avoiding his daughters. And his wife was from a noble Earthborn family, but even though he loved her, he'd have had to divorce her if she hadn't produced heirs. And although eventually she did bear the triplets, their antisocial tendencies had soon become apparent, and Hoover had them isolated in the palace. And the public explanation was this was to stop dissidents from kidnapping them, but really it was to prevent the public from learning the truth. And incarceration and exposure to kind of legends about Earth only just fueled their psychotic tendencies. And so when they were found screaming and covered in blood next to their mother's body, Hoover could no longer deny the rumours he'd heard, and he'd had to lock them up for their own good. But somebody had been using cybernetic implants to keep Elizabeth in a coma, and the Doctor reckons some other agenda is at work, because if Elizabethan dies, the President will be free to marry again. But as long as she remains technically alive, the triplets will be the only legitimate heirs. And since they're clearly unsuited to be in charge, this will clear the way for someone else to take the throne.
So very much a Game of Thrones sort of deal going on here.
Yeah. It's, reading this in modern day Britain, it's unthinkable to think of kind of coups happening to political machination.
So then we have Beezy and Zaquithian, two of Angie's boys, have decided they've had enough of their terrorism game, and when Handstrom, the chief technician, promises them amnesty, they leave to help evacuate the remaining visitors. However, Zernik, who has developed a crush on Angie, remains to help her find Fitz, and so does Handstrom, who wants to locate the princesses. And Handstrom reveals that he's the one who supplied the Angie boys with their weapons, kind of their anti-android guns and stuff, knowing that they weren't dangerous enough to start a full-scale revolution, but hoping to make the political climate so uncomfortable that President Hoover would resign and appoint Handstrom to rule in his place. And while all this is happening, Fitz is in the medieval zone, where the triplets are using a memory machine to try and make a very in-depth scan of his mind to learn more secrets about the TARDIS. And they're very surprised by the state of his memory, possibly because of the way the TARDIS had put Fitz back together. So his oldest memories are now permanent and appear to be crowding out some of the newer ones. And so the triplets offer to use his memories to create a replica of Philippa, who is Fitz's girlfriend from a previous book. I'm not sure which one, but the planet Mekta, I believe.
Yeah, I tried to remember. Parallel 59.
Oh, okay. On the condition that he convinces the Doctor to take them to Earth. However, he knows that it wouldn't be the real Philippa, and he rejects their offer. And it was roundabout here that I noted quite a typo in the narrative. Where is it here? It's in Chapter 7, where... Well, first, the Doctor loses his coat in a tussle with a gold security robot, but then a few pages later, he removes his coat to cover the deactivated Queen, and then picks the coat off her again, so he has two coats or something. And then towards the end of the chapter, there's a scene where President Hoover is referred to as Handstrom, aka, the chief architect, before the narrative reverts back to calling him Hoover again. So I'm wondering if there were too many names starting with H, and that may have, slipped by or something. But BBC Books, if you need a copy editor, I'm available should the need arise.
Yes. Because I've got the 50th anniversary edition, and I don't remember noticing that, or is that the version you were reading?
That's the version I was reading.
Okay,
yeah.
fine.
I'd screenshotted it. I can send it to you after.
I must admit, I was reading this, as mentioned earlier, during a heatwave. So there were some times where I was just going, oh, this book is just too complicated. Where I just went, all right, okay, what's going on there? Because of all of the, androids of various other people. And, so I think something like that would have slipped me by, because I was like, yeah, okay, fine. Because also, due to the heat, I was only able to really kind of like concentrate in chunks. So Handstrom, Anji and Zernick track down Fitz and the triplets, and Handstrom tried to manipulate the girls into agreeing to kill Hoover and letting Handstrom rule as regent until they come of age. But the princesses refuse, as they don't like the planet New Jupiter, and they want to go to Earth instead. And using various cannibalized parts from their bodyguard robots, they repair the android knights in the medieval zone's castle and have the protesting Handstrom taken to the dungeons. Anji and Fitz manage to escape, but Zernick falls behind and is recaptured. Fortunately, the Doctor and Hoover arrive in time to rescue Anji and Fitz from the pursuing knights, and somehow they must rescue Zernick and bring Handstrom and the princesses to book. And the Doctor thus suggests turning the princesses' game against them by infiltrating their fantasy. And the legends of King Arthur are about as accurate as the rest of the history in EarthWorld. But Anji nevertheless agrees to impersonate Queen Guinevere, spelt very differently than how it's more normally spelt, despite the nagging feeling that she's being somewhat disrespectful to Dave's memory. And she uses the sonic screwdriver to disorientate. There's an android of Sir Lancelot, not Lancelot, and convinces him that the triplets are the king's three evil sisters, Morgan, Lee, and Faye, which is quite funny because, is it Morgan Le Fay?
Yeah, it's a single.
Yeah, and Sir Lancelot has cast them into the dungeons and releases the brave Squire Zernick.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it was another kind of happy coincidence that Morgan Le Fay was divided up into three different names because, that corresponds with the
princesses, and it just makes it nice.
Yeah. I just emailed you the screenshot of that. So then President Hoover finally speaks to the triplets, whom he had shamefully abandoned, but they don't trust him until he agrees to let them scan his memories. And when they do so, they see that the Doctor has truly convinced him that they didn't kill their mother after all. And as they explain how the deep memory scan works, Anji realizes that the machine might be able to restore the Doctor's buried memories from, the Earth arc that we just went through. And Fitz is unable to explain in front of the Doctor why this might be a very bad thing, which I don't know the reason for that either. I'm assuming because if he remembers Gallifrey or something, then...
Well, yes. Yeah, because... he, minor spoilers, destroys Gallifrey.
And that's in
the ancestor cell,
yep.
And I think it's to protect himself from that. And I think there's other reasons as well, and it's all,
So Fitz is trying to avoid an entire Ninth Doctor Survivor Guild
trip. Yes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So when Fitz refuses to help, Anji volunteers to let the triplets use her brain for storage space, and she and the Doctor take their places in the machine before Fitz can think of a reason to stop them. However, once they're both connected to the memory machine, the Doctor and Anji finds that there are other memory prints stored in there, Africa's for one, which shows that the triplets think of themselves as three parts of the same person. And you kind of get that throughout the book where they're finishing each other's sentences and stuff. And buried deep beneath the other mind prints, the Doctor and Anji also find the memories of Handstrom, the technician, and Elizabethan, Hoover's wife, which the triplets took when they were first experimenting with the machine way back in the day. And those prints were deleted, but not entirely destroyed. So we get a little explanation about how computer data, if you delete something, isn't actually destroyed until it's overwritten by something else. And when Asia learns that they're still in there, she realizes that they can restore what remains of their mother's mind back to her body, although she'd have like a 7-year gap or so from when the memory print was taken. And before anyone can stop him, Handstrom quickly grabs a guard's gun and shoots the machine to prevent them from doing so. And this explosion kills one of the triplets, Asia, and then infuriated, Antarctica grabs a gun and shoots Handstrom, killing him, I believe. And then the Doctor and Anji, who were still connected to the machine when it exploded, then relived the last moments of Elizabethan's life for all to see. And as she was a geneticist, she knew that it was her husband who was unable to bear the children, not her. And she thus used genetic samples from Handstrom to conduct an in vitro fertilization of herself. But she made a mistake in the process, which split her one child into 3, each incomplete and suffering from personality problems, which made them unsuitable to rule. So like Asia, the one who died, she was like the brains of the operation. And Handstrom regarded the children as his own, and when Elizabethan told him that she intended to confess all this to the president, Handstrom then killed her. So the memory print that they were looking at was actually from Handstrom's point of view and not Elizabethan's, because she wouldn't have remembered the last moments of her life like that.
So as the Doctor and Anji emerge from this kind of like reenactment, and also during the course of this, they kiss. So
very TV movie.
Yes, very TV movie, and also at one point, because I hadn't quite realised what was happening. It kind of makes me think of Rose and the Doctor and
the whole Bad Wolf TARDIS energy.
Yeah. So the Doctor realises that he's got enough of Elizabethan's memories to restore her to life as the triplets had wished. And so he takes the memory machine to the TARDIS, intending to use it as a way of filling in the gaps in Elizabethan's memory. But Fitz still fears what might happen if the Doctor's own memories return in a shocking burst. And he privately asks the TARDIS to ensure that this doesn't happen. The Doctor successfully transfers Elizabethan's memories back into her body, but a power surge from the TARDIS destroys the memory machine before he can untangle his own kind of like copied memories. And the power surge also sparks Elizabethan's cybernetic body back to life. And without Asia, who was the kind of like the rational part of their being, Africa and Antarctica will never be complete again. But now they have their mother back. Maybe they might have all of the care that they need. And as Hoover takes his wife and surviving daughters back to the palace, Anji bids goodbye to Zernick and returns to the TARDIS for the Doctor and Fitz. Fitz still hasn't resolved his identity crisis fully, but he knows it's more important for him to protect the Doctor from his own crisis. And meanwhile, Angie returns to the TARDIS guest room, her bedroom, to find out that she's run out of distractions and she can no longer stop herself thinking about Dave's death. But as she starts to break down, the Doctor finds her and takes her to a room he's just found in the TARDIS. The door opens up onto a grassy hillside, which has thousands of butterfly... is it chrysalids? Chrysalids?
Yeah, like cocoons.
Cocoons. Yeah, that's a better word. Yeah, butterfly cocoons that are just waiting to open. And so there's new life in the TARDIS. And here, Angie can grieve properly for her loss. That is where EarthWorld ends.
Yeah.
So what do you make of it?
It felt a little unfocused and perhaps scattershot to me in parts. And like I mentioned earlier, it reminded me a little bit of Oh No It Isn't, where you have the different overlapping zones, like the medieval and desert oasis. And yeah, tonally, parts of this book had a very panto vibe, but then parts of it were also kind of very serious.
Yeah.
So it was a little inconsistent in my mind from that perspective, but what were your thoughts?
I agree. It was... I enjoyed it more when we were working through Angie's grief. I think one of my issues was that, I don't know, it felt like with the themes we were touching about, it shouldn't be this kind of like knockabout thing. Apart from the TARDIS crew, I didn't really care about any of the characters. But I mean, I've really got to care about Angie. And even if Fitz's trauma was something that I can't really relate to, I mean, I still was going, oh, okay, right, I can get behind that. But I don't know, I was just finding it certainly it was a lot more interesting when things were Angie focused, and because some of those chapters and sections are really very moving. and about how she was just trying to kind of like fight on and survive.
It's funny you should mention that, because in one of the things that came to mind as I was reading this was it felt very Chibnall era to me, in that the plot wasn't as important or wasn't fully baked, but the handful of really good character development scenes we got balanced it partially for me. It didn't get it all the way there, but that kind of focus on character growth and such felt very Chibnall in a good way.
Yeah.
But some of the plot aspects just and partially in hindsight too, right? We know that later on she goes back and covers some of that same territory.
Yes.
With like King Arthur or the Roman times and other books or short stories that we've read by her, and she does it more successfully there.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on, and like you said, it being her first novel and potentially her only novel at the time, she'd want to get in as much as possible, but yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder whether this might have worked better as like a novella. Possibly. It was reminding me in some ways of kind of like the Spider-Man clone saga. Like, no, this is a clone. No, this is like, oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I was finding it quite confusing at times, but also because I was just dipping in every now and again, and often was quite distracted about trying to lower the temperature in the house.
Trying not to melt.
Yes. So possibly not reading it in ideal circumstances. But I mean, there were things I did like all the stuff about how the history that we have by its very nature is kind of like a facet of our own times, and also how things get corrupted and lost over time. That's very interesting.
Yeah, that theme was really strong throughout, and I did appreciate too narratively how some of it felt very stream of consciousness, especially the bits from Anji and Fitz, and not in a bad way either. I mean, if anything, it made me care and sympathize with Anji almost immediately, despite not having read her introduction story, Escape Velocity. A couple of other just kind of quick tidbits related to this book. The TARDIS butterfly room that we get to see at the end was first introduced in the second Eighth Doctor novel, Vampire Science, and I think was previously destroyed in, maybe it was the Shadows of Avalon, where all the butterflies were killed off or something. And I haven't read that book, but I think that's what the new cocoons are referring to, that it'll have butterflies once again.
Well, the TARDIS has been repairing itself for the century that the Doctor stuck on Earth. So I wonder whether it's part of that as well. Maybe. I don't know.
After the events of this novel, the Doctor seems less interested in getting back his lost memories, and some of that is explored in Fear Itself, which takes place between this and the next book, which I don't know if that's Half-Life or what the next one after this is, but... And at one point, there's a throwaway line that the Doctor says something about remembering someone starting with the letter M. And I couldn't tell if that was like a reference to the Master or if it was maybe Miranda.
Mel.
Mel, could be. And then we also get a reference to the Holy Grail, which, of course, the Grail were data pirates obsessed with learning facts, which we met them in Oh, No, It Isn't. Yeah. Oh, and then also the Eighth Doctor is wearing the First Doctor's blue gemstone ring throughout this book as well.
Yeah.
And Fitz's love of Arthurian legends also features in the novel The Slow Empire, where he recounts the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So how would you score this one?
How would I score this? I think I'm going to... Yeah, I think I'll give it a 6. It was... I mean, there's definite promise here, but I think it was just a little bit too tonally all over the shop. And to be honest, if I wasn't doing it for the podcast, I am not sure that I'd have finished it.
About halfway through it, I kind of did have to kind of force myself to finish it.
Yeah.
For me, it's a 6 out of 10 as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's saved by the handful of really good character development scenes that we got. But yeah, the story itself feels a bit strung together. For example, like there were several different zones mentioned but not visited that sounded more intriguing than the zones that we did get to visit. And I do recognize, that Jacqueline Rayner's plots improve quite a bit over time as well. And as a first novel, we've certainly read worse.
But, yeah.
But yeah, it does show promise, especially with the character interactions. And I also probably, had I been reading this, in order sequentially at the time, probably would have appreciated all the references to the previous books and such, but not having read all of them, it did take me out of it a little bit, because I'd have to go look up, like, what are they referring to here now? And
it's a little bit like watching, I guess, maybe like an episode of Coronation Street from like 1996 and just isolation, and just going, what's going on? What? Who's
it's like,
this?
Oh, I recognize those three people, but these other families, yeah, that's a good analogy. But yeah, so that's EarthWorld. Anything else you'd say about it?
No.
Shall we move on to listener feedback?
Let's.
All right, so we have not one but two emails this month. Firstly, we heard from Adam Turnbull, who asks us if we read the book Legends of Camelot by Jacqueline Rayner. He says that it's an interesting take on the legends of King Arthur and features the great TARDIS team of the 10th Doctor and Donna. We have not picked that one yet, and we usually wait at least a couple of years before selecting, one of a newly published book. Plus, we just read Jacqueline Rayner this month, so. But you never know. Although I think I'd be more inclined to pick the 13th Doctor and Missy book that she wrote at the same time, but who knows? But thank you very much, Adam, for that suggestion.
Yeah, but there's also, I think, going to be a little bit more Tennant and Tate content coming our way in the near future. But yes, whether it's the 10th Doctor or the 14th or the Handy Doctor.
Or something else.
Yes, or something else entirely. Right, and we have another email from Kenny Smith from the Pieces of Eight podcast, who wanted to drop us an email to say how much he'd been enjoying the show. And Pieces of Eight is a very good show in its own right. I'm not just saying that because he said nice things about us. It is an excellent show. Yeah, and he said that he wasn't really aware of that many podcasts dedicated to the kind of like the printed word side of things in Doctor Who. And they cover the EDAs and their episodes, and they chat with the various authors. And so he found it a real delight to discover our little show. He has been listening to the McGann-centric ones, and he's managed to get through 50-plus episodes whilst walking around the Scottish countryside. There is very few countrysides finer to walk around. And he's looking forward to the EarthWorld episode. And he was asking who's reading what edition. So I think we touched on that. We both read the 50th.
Mm-hmm.
And the next series of Pieces of Eight in the autumn is going to cover the first 18 EDAs with exclusive interviews with virtually all of the authors. And they speak to Michael Collier. And he is a real person. So... yeah, and he tells us to keep up the fantastic work. Yeah, and he also noticing that our end music is the opening music from the old BBC video releases, and he was wondering whether the closing tune with kind of like the sad sounding extra rail at the end would be more appropriate. Now, the thing is, even though I had plenty of BBC videos in my time, obviously I can clearly picture I can clearly hear the opening music in my mind. I don't know if I think I always switched. I don't think I just let things play out to the very end, so I can't quite imagine it in my head. But
stick around, Kenny, for the end of this episode, and you might get your wish for one night only.
Right.
But yeah, it was a conscious decision, I think, because I listened to both versions, when kind of deciding which to use, and I thought the other one was a little bit too drawn out at the end, so that's why I went with the opening theme. But stick around and have a listen, and we'll see. But Chris, anything on the Facebook side?
The usual flurry of likes. So no comments. But Twitter, though, I think is where most of the action is.
And on Twitter this month, we've heard from It's Me, Nardi, who says about our Plague City podcast last month, "Ooh, enjoy some of Nardal's only expanded media stuff, but it's also a really good story." And we've also heard from Rain Saramsky, a.k.a. Rain SZ on Twitter, and she says, "Listening to this at work, I really loved this book and wished Nardal could have come back for others. She points out that this is the only original novel with this particular TARDIS team," which I didn't realize that, because the other two at that time, I think one was with just Bill, and then The other was a different one. And then she says, I miss them. And she says, both Bill and Nardole desperately need some more new book adventures. And her personal favorites from Plague City are when the 12th Doctor plays the Smiths and Joy Division. She supposes it's because she read it during a difficult time, and for some reason it really cheered her up. And she said, you wouldn't expect that with a book about the plague. And I agree there.
But it's a strangely life-affirming book, though, isn't it?
It is.
It
yeah.
is. It is.
It was very surprising in that.
Yeah, victory of hope.
Yeah. And she also says, and also Plague Doctor, it needed to be done. And Rain is an amazing artist and has done comic covers for Titan, among others, so do check out her work.
Yeah.
And then we've also heard from JB, a.k.a. Stormy Teacup 90 on Twitter, and they say, I read Plague City last year and seriously enjoyed it, and the Doctor Who show on Twitter called it one of the better Capaldi new series adventures, without a doubt. We also heard from Jeff Elston, who said he really enjoyed this episode. The story was a lot of fun, and he agreed with everything we both said, especially the part about Bill not being waylaid due to the plague. And he says the setting also brought back happy memories of his last trip to Edinburgh, which you can find on his travel blog, The One Guy Who Travels. And then Keith Say, 50DW50 on Twitter, says he enjoyed the Plague City podcast. Thanks, and he forgot how creepy the book is. So thank you, everyone, for all that feedback. And do please give us a rating or review on your podcatcher of choice. It'll help other listeners to find the show. And Chris, so we now at the point where you tell us what we're going to be reading for September.
Yeah. So for September, I thought that it'd be cool to read one of those rarities, an author who is quite prolific, but I don't think that we've ever read a novel by them. And also, as well, a particular TARDIS crew that I don't think we've covered quite, he says mysteriously. So, we are going to be experiencing Speed of Flight by Paul Leonard, featuring the Third Doctor, Mike, and Joe.
Huh. Very cool. I don't think I've read that one. So I've read Paul Leonard before. I think I've read Venusian Lullaby.
Yeah, I've read Venusian Lullaby.
I've read a Third Doctor and Joe book, but I don't think it was...
He also wrote Dancing the Code,
okay,
which is a Third Doctor and Joe book.
I have read Dancing the Code, because
Yeah.
that's a Third Doctor, Joe and Mike one as well.
Yes, well, and also the rest of Unit.
Yeah.
Whereas
Okay.
I think this is the Third Doctor, Joe and Mike on their own.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've not read this one before.
Yeah.
And it was a missing adventure.
Is it, or is it Past Doctor? I think it's Missing. Yeah, I think it's Missing. Missing Adventure.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So for September, Speed of Flight.
Yes.
Strap in. We'll see how... Cool. Well, until next month, this has been Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London. Happy reading and stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. Special thanks to George C. Music for use of their song Doctor Who Theme Swing Jazz Version. You can follow us on Twitter at ANDWBC Podcast and like us on Facebook. Help other listeners to find us by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. You can contact the show by emailing your thoughts to andwbcpodcast@gmail.com. And until next month, happy reading.
Paul Leonard is very kind of a Marmite
Yes.
author, perhaps, but I didn't mind the two books I have read with him, so
Yeah.
hopefully this one will be okay.
I've read another book of his that I remember very much enjoying. Yeah, the Venusian Lullaby. I was a little bit, but it was the first novel, so yeah, we shall see. But also, we've never done a Paul Leonard. I think we've done him in short story, but we've never done a novel by him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully, it's not going to be baking hot in August, but who knows?
Well, Dancing the Code was set in a desert. So
Yes.
if this one's not, that's probably a good thing.
No, this one's not.
For October, we will not need a dramatic reader.
Okay. Right.
That's all I'll say about
That's
that.
all you'll say. Okay. Marvellous. Okay. Well, because we're also coming towards the end of the cycle, I think, aren't we?
We are, yes. We're getting there.
Because I think there's the... let me just check. We have... Yeah, we've got the 11th to go. And have we done a 9th? Can't remember a Ninth Doctor book that we've done.
Ah, that's true.